Welcome everyone. Welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Pyxis and NZOQ. Today I'm going to cover the 7 problems facing the owners of management systems. And I have with me today Graham Forsman from the New Zealand Organisation for Quality. Graham's just taking a few moments just to get online, but Graham will be monitoring chat and making sure that I answer all of your questions today. So make sure that you fire these through as they come to mind. And I'll stop occasionally to respond to these, but most of these I'll leave them to the end to make sure that I cover everything that I said I would. Okay, so this is for you if you need to improve your systems. Maybe you're frustrated with your current situation, or perhaps you're buried in the day-to-day grind of action running the system. Maybe you're looking for some new inspiration, or looking for how you can improve the performance of your management system to take your organisation to the next level. If one or more of these are of interest to you, then you've certainly come to the right place. If not, then maybe you've signed up to the wrong webinar, and I'm sorry about that. But many thanks to those of you who filled out the survey on registering. I will share the main results of the survey at the end, just before the questions and answer session. And I know many of you have expressed all sorts of problems, and much the same problems actually that I'll be covering today, but I will answer your specific questions that you've raised during the Q&A session. Also, as I mentioned, I have a special offer for you, so make sure you stay till the end. But today I'm going to share with you the 7 most common problems that I still find today are facing the owners of management systems of organisations. The information I'm going to share with you today is normally what I provide to my paying consultancy clients. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Michael Voss, I'm Business Excellence Expert. You can contact me at these contact details here. You'll find I'm on LinkedIn, so please, I'd invite you to connect with me. I run webinars each month, not always on management systems. I also cover topics like leadership and governance. You will find the latest information on the michaelvossnz.com website. That's this website here. This is where I blog regularly. You're welcome to sign up to my blog there and to receive information as soon as it's posted, including those on future webinars and the training that we offer. Okay, so I used to work as a quality manager for one of New Zealand's most innovative companies. And I inherited a quality management system that was built by my predecessor, and it had serious problems that I actually had to overcome. When I started up my own consultancy, I was surprised to find that much the same problems were also experienced by the quality managers and health and safety managers in their companies. And after nearly 20 years helping them, I'm still finding much the same problems today, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. We were ISO 9001 certified. I found that our quality manual didn't reflect what our business actually did. I found our manual used words and terms that we didn't even use in our business, and it described processes that weren't actually how we operated. And this was really frustrating because I'd have to translate our manual from the ISO speak into our own day-to-day language so that the staff understood what I was asking them during audits, for example. We needed to have an ISO 9001 certificate on the wall simply because we were supplying products to the security industry, and it really was a specific business requirement that we had to have that certificate. I found that we were conducting lots and lots of audits, and I was conducting quality-related audits, and so too was the health and safety people. So there was lots of duplication of effort. We found that people weren't actually even following the procedures that were even in our manuals. So apart from preparing for audits, the only time we actually referred to our management system documentation was at the time when the external auditors were about to come to audit us. And then there was a mad panic to get all the documents up to date in time for the audit. We couldn't see that the management system documentation added any value at all to our business, except to keep that ISO certificate on the wall. Then one day I got a wake-up call. We received a serious complaint from one of our customers. We just weren't delivering a project on time, and they threatened us with cancelling the contract. And this was a really important business to one of our largest clients. So naturally, my managing director asked a very pertinent question. How is it that our management systems can have ISO 9000 certification when we apparently have no control over our development processes? He told us that unless we did something significant to fix our systems over the next 3 months, then we were going to lose this very significant client. So clearly we needed to act quickly. And of course I had the mandate to do so at this point. Wind the clock on 2 years later. We now have a single management system that's owned by the people who are actually doing the work. The management system is accessible to everyone and managed by subject matter experts in the various areas throughout the business. So now I'd managed to rise above the clouds, as this image portrays. I had integrated audits scheduled for the whole year as part of the business planning process. So we made sure we focused on the things that were really important as far as the business was concerned. My workload has become much easier, and I've effectively delegated a lot of what I used to do to the people who are actually doing the work and those that were actually responsible for it. So this freed up my time to focus on training other people and what the systems were and what they meant and how they could actually improve their own processes so they weren't totally reliant on me. I also was able to take over strategic planning and special projects for my managing director. So it was an opportunity for me to branch out and learn some new stuff. And I really enjoyed the challenge. And it also came with a great pay rise too, which was also helped. So we flew through external audits with our certification body, moving us from 9 monthly to 12 monthly surveillance visits. And incidentally, we never did have that contract cancelled on us. So we didn't lose our important customer. We set new delivery dates and delivered every project milestone to them. So our complaining customer had now turned into one of our greatest advocates. And we were proud of that testimonial and the references that they gave us. This is the sort of stuff now that I do for my consulting clients. Just before I get into the most common problems, I'd be interested in hearing about your own situation. Are you more like where I was in the past or 2 years later? Type in either past or 2 years later into chat now. While you're doing this, can you also check that you've turned off all the distractions? Turn off SMS, Skype, text, and your cell phone. And if you've got limited bandwidth and so you're really struggling to see the pictures, you may want to shut down programs like Skype and Mail and Dropbox that use the internet periodically. So take a little time to do this now. I'm going to give you some high value during this webinar, and I promise to share with you what I give my individual clients. And if I deliver that, will you allow me 10 minutes at the end to give you my special offer? Now on to the seven common problems I find. Perhaps you have some of your systems online and a lot still left in paper form. Perhaps you've got a separate system for managing health and safety, another one for managing quality, a separate one for IT security. If you're in the food industry, then you're likely to have a HACCP system to control those critical control points in your manufacturing process. Lots of systems for managing different parts of the organization in different places and possibly under different managers. What this does is this causes confusing lines of responsibility, unnecessary waste with documentation, which is often duplicated in many places, along with the same procedure steps carried out multiple times. So some of the problems you're likely to see is that people are interrupted with different audits. So they might have a health and safety audit one week, a quality audit next week, food safety one the following week, environmental gets in the way. So all this compliance gets in the way of actually running the business. So these systems, these various systems, whether it be quality, health and safety, environment, food safety, and so on, they look more like an add-on to the business. than part of how you actually run the business. So type into chat if you can relate to any of these. The solution to this problem is to combine all of these various disparate systems into one single integrated management system. So this means that the integrated management system reflects your business, and you interrupt your people just once when you need to conduct an audit or manage those risks or other parts of your business. So a key part of this is to make sure you take responsibility, or make sure that people take responsibility for all aspects of their work, including health and safety, quality, environment, risk, business continuity, and so on. All the aspects of your business that need to be managed should all be managed by one single integrated management system. So the key way to address this is to make sure you integrate all your management system requirements all into one single system. Next problem I want to talk about. You can tell a lot about an organization just by listening to the conversations of workers, particularly during breaks. And I recall overhearing one worker saying to another, "It's not where things need fixing, where production supervisors had decided they were going to do in response to a customer complaint. The workers here were engaged in the business, but felt powerless to actually make it necessary in the organization. And no one seems to care what they think. It's as if they're paid to do what they're told, to leave their brains at the front gate and just bring their lunchbox in. But our organizations today need to be much, much better than that." This company suffered for a lack of communication and worker involvement. And these are actually deep-seated cultural issues right deep down in the organization. And they often reflect the attitudes of the senior leaders, particularly in small to medium businesses, but it's not always the case. In this particular company that I'm describing here, the problem wasn't with senior leaders, but further down. I fixed this largely by introducing clear, effective communication between the production supervisors and the workers. It was actually the production supervisors where this breakdown occurred and where they had the wrong culture, and they basically told their workers exactly what to do. And that was where the barrier was. And the middle management were not aware of what the production supervisors were doing until we actually highlighted it for them. And then once highlighted, we could actually address the issue. Another situation, perhaps you can relate to this type of image, where it's expected that you will keep quiet, or maybe you've experienced being told to keep quiet rather than report bad news. It's never anyone's fault. Leaders actually look around to see who to blame when somebody gets hurt or a customer complains. This sort of company has a blame culture. Symptoms to look out for in either of these sorts of situations. You look at their health and safety performance and it's lousy. People getting hurt all the time. People are unhappy. They're frustrated. There's high staff sickness and high staff turnover. They keep repeating the same mistakes. They keep finding and reporting the same things to management, but nothing ever gets done about it. It just gets swept under the carpet as if it never happened. And of course, what I mentioned here, people are told to keep quiet. And there's serious consequences for anyone that speaks out of turn. So type into chat if you can relate to any of these. Okay, so just carrying on. I'm just wondering whether any of you can relate to these particular problems that I was talking about before. Symptoms to look out for are health and safety performance is lousy. People are unhappy or frustrated in the workplace. Maybe there's a high staff sickness and turnover where people keep repeating the same mistakes. They keep finding and reporting the same things to management. Nothing gets done about it. You get told to keep quiet, and serious consequences for speaking out. These are the kinds of symptoms you find where an organization has the wrong sort of culture in the organization. The thing is, you need to develop the right culture. You certainly can never achieve zero harm if you can't communicate properly and get the right organizational culture in your organization. And culture is really established by the senior leaders. So this means everybody needs to work closely with them. And so those of you who have responsibility for management systems need to work very closely with senior managers to make sure that everyone behaves in the right way. And I don't have much time today to culture really is like, but a lot of people talk about a just culture. And certainly this follows the work done by Professor James Reason. And a lot of work has been done by James Reason in the aviation industry in particular. But if you Google James Reason, you'll find a lot of very useful information about how to develop the right culture in an organization that will bring about a zero harm type situation, and you'll find it a much, much better and more comfortable place to actually work and operate in. Number 3, are you buried in documentation? Now, I did notice that from the survey that people filled out prior to attending the webinar, that there is a lot of you who can relate to this particular person's lot in life. There's so much that you can't, there's so much documentation that you can't possibly keep it all up to date. People don't follow the procedures that are out there anyway. And even if they did, so many procedures are out of date, and you'd be out of business if you did actually follow those procedures. So those of you who have actually familiar with ISO 9000 and 14001 standards and followed the changes released last September, you'll recognize that there's no longer a need to have a management system manual. And this means that you don't have to document everything you do. Not that you ever had to in the past anyway. It's just that most consultants and auditors have told us for far too long that we have to document it using complicated wording and so on. The important thing is that we need to control our processes, but we do not need to actually do this. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. The important change here is that you have to meet the requirements of the various standards, but nobody says that you actually have to write a book telling you how you should actually go about it. And I know a lot of you responded to the survey at the start to say that this. And this is also what I inherited from my predecessor. I found that after lots of document changes and trying to change the documents, I finally decided that the best thing to do was to start afresh with a new management system. And I eventually shredded the old paper mountain. So the kinds of problems that you'll see here and symptoms that I know a lot of you can relate to is you get bogged down in documentation. You're dealing with compliance all the time, and it's an absolute headache. You've actually got, because you're so preoccupied with updating documents, you've got no time to make real improvements. And anyway, it's hard to find the improvements that you've made anyway. And then equally as frustrating, you've produced all these documents, made all these changes, only to find that people actually don't follow the procedures at all. So type into chat if you can relate to any of these. So what do we got here? I'll just have a look at Tess. So Tess is saying the audio is fine. That's good. Okay, so says everything's fine. That's good. Excellent. Mark says yes, most of them. A few people, John, saying no. Alan says yes. Tess says yes. Yes, indeed. Okay. So it seems like a lot of you people can certainly relate to what I'm saying here. Okay, so what do you do about it? It's pretty simple. You actually need to get rid of that document mountain. So how do we do this? My message, having tried all sorts of different ways, is to use automation wherever possible. Automation does for you is actually completely eliminates the need for additional documentation to be made. So those of you who can actually automate your processes or use technology, software as a service type applications, some of them bespoke, some of them customized, some of them are straight out of the box, which do 90% of what you want to do. Whenever you can use automated systems, it actually eliminates completely the need for documentation. You definitely need to retire old documentation, remove duplication. One of the other key comments, I think, is a lot of our documentation is full of a lot of how-to information. And this often clutters up our documents. It also frustrates people because you find that we've got very, very large documents that are full of all sorts of very, very useful information. I'm not saying getting rid of the information. I'm saying transfer it out of some of the SOPs, some of your processes, and put it in. A lot of organizations are now using wikis and encyclopedic type applications, which you can access quite easily from your electronic documentation, which contains the how-to information that forms what I loosely describe as training notes. So I think simplifying documentation, retiring old documentation, removing duplication, transfer your how-to information that clutters up your documents into wikis or separate information which can be work alongside standard operating procedures as how-to type information. More like help instructions is always very useful. Also, you can start by refocusing internal audits from looking for adherence to written SOPs, what I call compliance auditing, to look critically at what people actually do and start highlighting those pieces of the SOPs that are actually helpful to workers doing the job. So really you're shifting from compliance auditing to process improvement auditing. I think it's the key way to get away from the paper mountain situation, is to shift emphasis from compliance to one of improvement. If you're always preoccupied with just ensuring people are complying with the SOPs, you have no time at all to be looking at the SOPs critically relative to the business and saying, well, actually, how do we improve this? I was running some training, in fact, just yesterday for an organization that shall remain nameless. And we found that during one of the audits that was being conducted, and this was auditor training I was doing, one of the audit teams actually discovered that there were two procedures, which were two separate processes, which were actually quite confusing because it was not clear how the decision would be made as to under which circumstance one would use either procedure at either process. So that led to confusion. In actual fact, the confusion, the audit team decided the best way around that would have been actually to combine the two procedures, which were actually remarkably similar. So by replacing two processes with one, you would actually eliminate that from being a problem. And of course, also halve the amount of documentation that was required. So by far the most effective means is to avoid using duplication. So use automation to simplify the amount of documentation that your management system needs. And then when you do document, think carefully about what are the critical pieces of information that need to be included in the process itself, and then separate out the how-to information. So assume the SOP and other documentation are competent to do that work. And if they're not competent to do that work and need to learn how to do that work, then they will be more heavily relying on the how-to information, which is, as I said before, contained in wikis or other useful training note information. Okay, next problem. I often find people auditing the same processes using exactly the same checklist month after month, year after year. And this is just like looking in the same places under the same stones. If you do, then you start seeing the same things. It's not until you go looking elsewhere under different stones that you see different things. And often the biggest problems in your business are in those areas you're not currently looking. There will always be more processes, like stones in this picture, than you've got time to audit. You can't look at or look under each stone. One of my clients recently told me they've got over 1,000 processes in their business. It would be difficult to audit all these processes, even over a 10-year cycle. Fortunately, there's actually no need. You need to prioritize the processes and decide which ones you'll audit, just like the stones on the beach. Which stones will you actually look at? So some of the problems you'll see is there's lots of time and cost spent doing auditing, but there's not enough time to actually conduct the audit, despite all the amount of time and effort that's being spent in there. And you find that you're auditing the same things year after year, month after month, and there's no time to make real improvements. So if you see some of those problems, then type those into chat now, if you can relate to any of these symptoms. The way to deal with this is to focus on just the important processes. So there will be a few areas and processes that are the highest risk and of highest importance to your organization. And you need to target those specific processes when you're conducting audits. There is a consequence of this, and that means that some processes in your business may never ever get audited. And what that probably means is that some of those processes are so either used rarely or they're of little importance, so you can afford as a business to wait until things break before looking at them. Nobody actually said you have to audit absolutely every process in the business. So it's important that you focus on the important processes. And to do that, you need to take a risk-based approach to it. So what are those processes that cause the greatest amount of customer complaints? Where are the processes which are the most dangerous in your organization and represent the most significant hazard and risks to the people in your workplace? What are those processes that involve some of the greatest assets in your business that are very costly when things go wrong? Where is it that it's costing you dearly? What about the brand? Where are those processes which can have the greatest influence on the brand and who you are as an organization? Business processes to focus on during your audits. Let me just have a look at some of the comments that have come through on processes. Bill says standard checklists hamstring effective audits and real improvements. Absolutely agree with you, Bill. Catherine says improvements get sidelined by the business as usual, rightly so to stay in business, but have the right way to convey value. Yep. Audit checklists ought to be banned, says John. Great, excellent comment. Matthew, agree with. Bill, many try to use spreadsheets, but not accessible to all who need it. Yep. Documentation does still add value. Yep. Jeff says too many different spreadsheets to remember to update. Yep. Glenn's moving to a fresh start at the moment. That's excellent. Good to hear, Glenn. I agree there's too much time to spend updating documentation, which never gets used much. Yes, that's right. Yeah, absolutely agree. Catherine, relating to shredding of old manual was a bit nerve-wracking that we would still have enough, but the audit was complimentary. Yeah. Look, Catherine, I think this is something that I can relate to as well. I was really frightened that when I biffed out the old manual that our ISO certificate was going to be threatened. And I found that I need not bother about that, because I found my external certification body auditor came to me and they said, well, it was rubbish anyway. It's just a pity they never recognised it and told us that we should actually do something about it earlier. But they were highly complimentary and very supportive of me biffing out the old manual and starting again. So I can certainly relate to that, but I can certainly relate to the fact that it was certainly a nerve-wracking experience. I had many sleepless nights, bothered about the fact that I might lose that ISO certificate. And Nicole says, too much paperwork and outdoor staff don't fill in the required documentation or information. Yeah, look, it's a challenge. I think Nicole, you need to sit down with those people and say, well, you know, what do we actually need? Go back to square one, say, look, do we actually need these documents? And convince yourself that, yes, for a start, that is necessary documentation. We need all that critical information. Then you've just got to hammer it home that the outdoor staff do need to do that. So I think that's most important. Okay, so back on to number 5. Look, I find it's really difficult to stand out from the crowd today, and you'll find your customers are really spoilt for choice. So even if you have an ISO 9000 certificate, you have to recognise that there are 1.2 million other organisations have it also. So for example, if you're this business here, around you, you have another 1.1 million organisations that all look very, very similar to you. And the question is, how do you stand out from the others? And the thing is, you need to excel at something that makes you unique. That means you can go beyond just complying to be the very best that you can, to be excellent. So I think while a lot of businesses are focusing on compliance, what they're doing is they're just making themselves look a lot like every other one of those organizations that's out there. What you need to do is to look at the people who are different, be excellent, stand out from the crowd. So I think this total preoccupation with compliance means there's no interest or time to improve, and we're always firefighting. So organizations that are motivated to just keep their certificate on the wall, then they're very much compliance focused. But really aspiring your people to become excellent is far more satisfying activity that will motivate your people to lift performance. And this is where excellence lies. And being excellent is how you can stand out from the rest. My message here is you have a choice to stay where you are, complying with requirements that keep the certificate on the wall, or to lift performance to become excellent. So I think you've got a choice. You can be compliance focused or focus on excellence. And I think compliance tends to lead to mediocrity, where you're seen to be like all of the others. But it's those organizations that dare to be different, to stand out from the competitors who are using excellence. What this means from an audit perspective is you need to shift your focus away from compliance and move into excellence. It's much the same as the comment I made before to, I think, Catherine, where we get very comfortable about auditing around compliance, and we look at our SOPs and we make sure that our people are actually following those procedures. But at the end of the day, we need to look beyond those procedures and say, what is our business actually about? How do we aspire to be better? So our focus on our audits needs to be around excellence. And compliance will actually take care of itself, but we need to trust that that is okay. So by looking beyond, above the bar of compliance and saying, let's do the very best we possibly can here. And the compliance side of things will take care of themselves. But it's a matter of trusting that that is actually what we want. Quite often our leaders, of course, are very much preoccupied around making sure we comply with the law, making sure we comply with the standards, ISO 9000, ISO 14000, ISO 45001, the Health and Safety Management Standard when it finally does become released this year. But look to excellence, because that will enable us to surpass these minimum requirements that are required by law or by standards. It's a far more satisfying environment to be working in and far more exciting. Next item, next problem. Have you ever felt like your reports to senior management seem like they enter a big black hole where everything goes in and very little ever comes out? The report goes into this big black hole and disappears, gets deleted. One of the most important reports a manager leads from the internal audit, they need information that tells them whether their management system is working effectively for them or not. In my own situation, I was providing really very poor reports to my manager. And that's why it was a big surprise when he received the complaint from our important customer. He simply didn't know how poorly our systems were serving us. Now, I've sat as a leader on the other side for too long to know that it's really frustrating to receive a report from your auditors only to find that it didn't provide any new information or what you were looking for that you needed to make the decisions you needed to make. So the only logical choice is to actually hit the delete key and get on with the next action item. You really don't want your audit reports to get deleted. From those you send out to do the auditing, it feels like they shouldn't take it too seriously, because it's frustrating to do a job well and then be ignored and nothing changes from any of the findings. So it's really important to make sure these audit reports go to management in a way which is actually digestible to them and adds value to what they're trying to do. The kinds of things you'll see here is you're not sure if management are getting what they need. Maybe you get no feedback on the audit reports. And the way to solve this is through lack of communication. So type it into chat if you can relate to any of these problems I've talked about. Essentially, the way to solve this is, in fact, to deliver valuable information on the management system to senior managers. And this takes communication. You need to first understand what it is that senior leaders need, and then sort out how best to deliver what they need for your business. Managers and senior leaders, they need to know if their integrated management system is suitable, adequate, and running effectively for the business. They need information from those that are responsible for the management system that informs them of this, so they can make those informed decisions that they need to achieve the outcomes they're looking for. They control the resources. So if you're short on resources to tidy up documentation or to bring about that culture change, then it's important to deliver these messages to senior leaders. And of course, the formal way to do this is through your audit reports. Okay, let's have a look now at, just come back to some comments. Okay, where are we up to? Let's have a look. Matthew says difficult part to put value on improvement. I agree. Yeah, quality is what you say you do. Yeah, prove it. Yep. John's put an article on the LinkedIn site about how to work out how much detail include in the document. That's good. David's got a document around departmental processes. Yeah, just be careful about departmental processes. And I'm not a fan of necessarily writing processes for each department. It really comes back. One of the things you must be careful when you're going to map out processes for your business is to look at it from the customer's eyes, not from the current organizational structure. So be very careful when you're going to write processes around particular departments, because most often you will find that to add value to customers, it requires delivery of value from multiple departments. So be very careful about that. What else have we got? David found value audits, total savings. Yep. Okay. Catherine says audits have not been well understood, but now working alongside rather than checklist gatekeeping, which is good. Yep. Excellent. Okay. So there's some good comments there. Great. Okay. So number 7, perhaps you're getting indications that customers are not happy with you or the products and services you deliver. Or perhaps so many costs have been stripped out that there's just a matter of time before you have to publish the eventual product recall notice. Or maybe your call center is getting flooded with irate customers. The last thing you want to do is receive this kind of feedback. As I mentioned earlier, this happened to me and it was not pleasant. Type into chat if you can relate to this. We had a situation where this was a real serious problem with our customer complaint. Maybe you haven't had customer complaints, but maybe you can relate to this story. I could have thrown my job away at any stage after we got that complaint. And believe me, I had moments when I felt just like doing that. I did see it through to the end. And when I look back on it now, I see it as one of my greatest achievements. It made a difference to the business and to so many people who worked in the organization. And over the years, I've coached and mentored many people to take responsibility for their organization's management systems. And I don't just mean changing documents, I mean changing the whole system. And this requires action at a much higher level. You're actually having to operate at the system level. And you find that you need to engage a lot more with senior leaders and senior management. Now, not everybody's comfortable doing this and working closely with management. And I often see people leave because they just simply cannot relate and they cannot interact with senior leaders. Also, I see a lot of people in these positions who just can't seem to get any interest or commitment from their leaders to improve the business. Often those leaders see their job to just keep compliant, and they are frustrated that they don't have time to improve the systems. Eventually, they get so frustrated that they leave. Now, I was really lucky in my business simply because a customer complaint had come back to my managing director, and he knew he had $5 million worth of business at stake. He was motivated to do something about it. So whenever I knocked on his door and I had a chat with him, he took me very seriously and he listened to what I said and he did most of what I said. So I was in a really, really great space. I don't know what would have happened had I not had him so motivated to make the change. So you might find the kinds of symptoms or problems, you're stuck doing the same thing. You've got a growing mountain of management system documentation. You feel like there's not enough resource to update documentation. You feel in a rut you can't get out of. How can you get things better? These are the kinds of things that you would see. And this requires a system change. This has gone way beyond just changing documentation, because that's just like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. You need to communicate and engage with senior leaders over the context of the business, rebuild the system from the ground up, and then the documentation you need will just fall nicely into place. So really the message here is you've got to change the whole system. So start measuring the value your contribution makes to the business in dollar terms so that they can see a return against the cost that your part of the operation involves. Return on investment, language of senior leaders, and they need to see the value that you deliver to the business. It's a really important step. Shift the attention, your attention from just changing documentation, as I said before, to change the entire systems that run the business. And shift your level up to the policies and work process level. So and not so much down at the detailed SOP level. And that's the solution to that. So in summary then, to solve the 7 biggest problems: number 1, integrate your systems. Number 2, develop the right culture. Number 3, automate to simplify your documentation. Number 4, focus on the most important processes. Number 5, move to excellence. Number 6, communicate more effectively with senior leaders. Number 7, focus on changing the whole system. Type into chat now which numbers you think would make the biggest difference to help move your business forward. I'll just ask you a question. If I could show you a way that would be affordable for you to pick up some valuable tools and experience in addressing these problems, would that be of interest to you? We've developed the Managing Integrated Systems workshop. This is a 1-day face-to-face course, and it's run in 6 locations throughout New Zealand. It's specifically designed to give owners of management systems of health and safety, quality, environmental, or integrated management systems the tools and techniques they need to make their jobs go more smoothly. It's, if you like, what I've learned over the last 20 years that would have helped me through that 2-year period it took me to transform our business, all crammed into 1 day. So here's what you get. Firstly, how to integrate your management systems so you can avoid lots of duplication of effort. And secondly, I show you how to how to use the Excellence Values mind map to assess the culture of your organization. You can use this tool to track the development of the kind of culture you need to drive health and safety outcomes towards zero harm for your workplace. You get our improvement assessment tool, and I show you how to determine which parts of your improvement process are not working correctly. You'll receive our process maturity grid, which you'll use to check which processes are in most need of improvement. You also get our audit prioritization tool so that you can schedule audits much more effectively. I'll cover how you report to top-level management, what's going to be of most value to them in making decisions. And you'll get our process return on investment tool so that you can use to make sure you minimize the costs associated with audits. I'll quickly show you 3 of these tools. This is the Excellence Values mind map, so you can compare the beliefs and behaviors of your organization against the world's best. This is our improvement assessment tool. You use this to look for blockages in your continuous improvement efforts, determine actions you need to take to fix these, and set priorities. Third tool you get is our process maturity grid, which you can use to check which processes are in greatest need of improvement and where your limited efforts are best spent on making those improvements. So this course is for you if you want to regain control of your management system, make it relevant again for your business, and lead your organization to a whole new level of performance. It's not for everyone though. So people who do not want to change or to learn new ways of running a business, I recognize it's not for everyone. And I know that most people to come along to workshops like this, and when they return to the office, they slot back into the same old way of doing things. If you're not prepared to change things, then probably this is not the right workshop for you. Yes, you may learn some really cool things, but there's no point if you're not prepared to go back to the office and actually lead the change in your organization. Here are what some past attendees of the day workshop have said about the experience. And since these comments, we've revised the workshop because, of course, the ISO standards have changed and our thinking has also changed. And so we've further refined many of the tools for the 2016 courses. So what would the alternatives cost you? In my own case, I spent nearly $100,000 over a 2-year period on consultants and getting the advice I needed. But that was still a small price to pay because we were about to lose a deal that was worth $5 million to our business. Now, you could pay consultants to help you, or you could learn most of what you need to do along with others in similar situations in their companies, in a team environment, where you can learn from others and also stay in touch with other workshop attendees to help each other out at a fraction of the cost. Here's another comment from one of my past workshop attendees. Duncan raises a good point here. I felt really lonely over the 2 years that I was transforming the management systems in my organisation. There wasn't anyone else in our business that really understood what I was actually going through. And I was very lucky that I had a great network of experts outside to lean on for advice and encouragement. The way I see it, you've got two choices. Well, actually three. You could do nothing and carry on the way you are currently. You could spend a lot of time like I did searching for what you need, or you could go to the link and sign up and get the tools and knowledge you need to make your job easier. Remember, the normal price for this day workshop, $1,067. Just for signing up to the webinar, you get to go to this training for the very special price of $950 plus GST. Here are some of the biggest benefits. People take responsibility for their own work as a result of the implementing these outcomes. The management system workload gets reduced, so you've got more time for auditing or doing other activities. System largely takes care of itself, so it requires less from you to actually drive the whole process. As an additional bonus, you'll also get to assess one item of your business against the World-Class Excellence Framework using our assessor tool. So all up, the normal price for including the bonus assessment is $1,467. To get the special price to attend any of the public courses for 2016, you must book within the next 10 days. Some of the questions I'm often asked: is it appropriate for health and safety reps? Yes, it is. Is it classroom only? Yes, it is at this stage, but let me know if you're interested in doing online. Do I get to use the tools afterwards? Absolutely. You get to use the assessor tool, but you don't get the tool, but you will get to take the mind maps that you use, that you create using it. But you get all of the other tools that I introduce you to. And you can use these tools back in your own organization as many times as you like. So let me walk you through what happens when you click the link below. Here's what the information page looks like. So you'll find the learning outcomes and some testimonials. These public courses are administered by the New Zealand Organisation for Quality. If you're interested about customizing the course for your business, then please contact me by contacting me for customization button. But to book the public courses, you'll need to click download a registration form. This is the registration form. When you fill it out, it's important that you insert the words webinar special $950 under the training fee, otherwise you'll be paying the full price. And make sure you do it within the next 10 days. Spaces are limited, so book in early so you don't miss out on your choice of location. If you are interested in attending in Auckland early next month, then I'd suggest that you get in touch with Tess immediately by email or using the phone number listed on the order form. Tess is looking to finalise numbers for the Auckland training over the next few days, so get in quickly so you're not disappointed. So once again, here's what you get. All for the discounted price, $950 plus GST. Now to the survey. We found that 50% of people who responded to the survey had separate management systems and should have been integrating them. 50% of people are struggling with people not following their procedures in the organisation. And 36% equally over people who are overwhelmed with documents and where management systems viewed at a cost. So all of these items I've actually covered during the actual webinar itself. Now to some questions and answers. Just while you're a few questions that I had picked up earlier. Jimmy asked the question, well, he said that he's having great difficulty getting management on board. The best way to solve that problem, Jimmy, is in fact to communicate. So that's item number 6 with senior leaders. Glenn's talking about too many documents. I think that is around my comment number 3, which is about going through and simplifying your documentation. Paul raises a very good point about balancing rigor with responsiveness. There's no question about it. The more that you tie people down with documentation, the least responsive that the organization has to become. Paul, my comment to you there is make sure you automate things and make sure you take your documentation up to a level. And remember, I mentioned earlier about the importance of removing as much how-to information and putting it out into wikis or elsewhere. So you're not telling people how to do the work, but you're telling people what the outcomes are. So I think that's really important. Gary wanted a question around updating to ensure compliance and better understanding of additional requirements. That's really a matter of, we haven't covered that today. Gary, there's plenty you can Google changes to ISO 9000 2015 and you'll find lots of free information about what the changes are and how to respond to those. Kelly talks about a commitment from staff. I think that is to do a lot with, it's about developing documentation and bringing your people along with you. So the documentation cannot be owned by you as the owner of the management system, but it needs to be owned by the staff who are actually taking responsibility and accountability for their own work. So it's important that you hand over ownership of the processes to the people doing the work. Leighton talks about ISO implementation, which once again is a matter of being confident that you've got your systems under control and you've got an adequate amount of documentation around that. Cherie talks about too much paperwork. I've talked about that. Matuza talks about documentation and training. That's the same issues I talked about before, which is about too much documentation. A lot of similarities of comments there. Look, I'm just very conscious of time, but just let me see. I'm going to have to wrap up this very shortly. Let's see whether there are any other comments. Anybody got any further questions or comments? Graham has posted on chat. You can contact Tess via email. The email address is there. The phone number is there. I would encourage you to get in contact as soon as possible. Anybody got any other questions? Look, I think what we will do, I'm now running over time by 2 minutes, and I do not like to run too much over time. Look, thank you very much for your time, people. I've appreciated this. You know my email address. It's michael@pyxis.co.nz. If you have any other questions that you wish to, that I have not been able to get to your questions, or you feel as though I've inadequately answered them today, please get in contact and let me know. But thank you very much for attending this webinar.